A fire at the residence of Justice Yashwant Varma in the national capital on March 14 led to the alleged recovery of bundles of currency notes. Justice Varma has since been transferred from the Delhi High Court to the Allahabad High Court, and an in-house inquiry has been initiated into the matter by Chief Justice of India Sanjiv Khanna. The development, though, has once again brought to the fore issues related to judicial accountability and also the procedure that is followed for appointment of judges. We have with us senior advocate and activist Prashant Bhushan, who has been campaigning for many years for greater judicial accountability, to talk about the issues that arise out of the Justice Varma episode. Thank you, sir, for talking to Frontline.
My pleasure.
To begin with, I want to ask you about how do you look at the action that has been taken so far in the Justice Varma matter?
No, I think the Chief Justice of India has acted very appropriately by firstly instituting an in-house inquiry and constituting a fine inquiry committee of 3 outstanding judges and transferring him, ordering the Chief Justice of the High Court not to allot him judicial work till the inquiry is pending, and also making all the information about it and all the documents public. I think these are all very appropriate and commendable steps taken by the Chief Justice. This is how, in the current system, judicial corruption needs to be dealt with.
So the Chief Justice of India released a lot of information related to the case and also videos of the currency notes that were allegedly recovered in the fire incident. And this is sort of an unprecedented kind of a disclosure that has happened. So how do you look at that?
Yeah, no, I'm glad that this kind of disclosure has happened, and this kind of disclosure should take place in all cases of this kind. But this one was probably prompted by the unprecedented public uproar that arose after it was reported that this kind of fire had happened and so much cash and bundles of cash had been discovered, etc., and that there was a video about it and so on. So therefore, I suppose the public outcry following the disclosure of this incident almost forced the hand of the Chief Justice to put everything in public domain, order a very good in-house inquiry, and also to transfer him in the meantime and decide not to allot him work in the meantime till the inquiry report is received.
Corruption in higher levels of judiciary is a matter that you have taken up earlier also. How serious is the issue of corruption in judiciary?
No, I think it is very serious, and it is becoming more and more serious. This corruption, of course, corruption is of many kinds. There is outright financial corruption, and there is also political corruption. If you put these two kinds of corruption together, there is a huge amount of corruption in the judiciary and including in the higher judiciary in the country today. It's probably a little less in the Supreme Court than it is in the high courts or in the lower courts, but it is still considerable. But even this financial corruption is a kind of virus that has been spreading. And therefore, I feel and I notice that this is also increasing in recent years. And it's increasing partly because there is no proper system of accountability and investigation of these kinds of allegations in the present system.
Right. And there's also the issue of public perception then when you talk about corruption in judiciary. So the strength of judiciary comes from its credibility, how the people look at it. So if the public perception is suffering, what does it mean for the institution?
No, it is very unfortunate that this is happening, and that also public perception about the judiciary and judicial integrity is not very good, and that has undermined public confidence in the judiciary. and that also to some extent undermines the rule of law. But the undermining of the rule of law is because of the problem of corruption in the judiciary. It is that problem that has to be dealt with. Sometimes judges think that putting everything under the carpet and stopping all public exposure of judicial corruption by using the threat of contempt of court, that this is a solution to the problem. No, that is not the solution. The solution is to directly deal with the problem and put in place proper systems of investigation and accountability.
How do you look at the mechanism that is available right now? You've spoken about it. You've said it's not adequate, the accountability mechanism. For example, an FIR cannot be registered against a judge without the consent of the Chief Justice of India. And also, you've said that impeachment is impractical and it's a political process. So, what do you have to say about this mechanism as a whole, and what solutions do you suggest to make the accountability mechanism more robust?
Yeah. So currently, in order to take any action against judges, we only have the system of impeachment. And that's a political process to begin with, because 100 MPs have to sign the impeachment motion, which often gets politicized. And thereafter, there is an inquiry committee. If the impeachment motion is signed and admitted by the Speaker or the Vice President, there is an inquiry committee which is set up. If the inquiry committee holds him guilty, then the matter goes back to Parliament, where it has to be voted upon by both houses with 2/3 majority, etc. So it's a very, very difficult and politicized process. In my view, totally impractical. And that is why till today no judge has been successfully impeached in this system. The other mechanism that has been set up is this in-house inquiry. This is an informal thing set up by resolution in a Chief Justice's conference in 1997. And my own experience has been that this method is very rarely activated, even though when the successive Chief Justices have received credible complaints. We ourselves have made several complaints against several judges over the past many years, but most of those complaints have not been acted upon by the Chief Justices, and they can just choose to ignore them, which they have usually done. It's only rarely that Chief Justices set up in-house inquiry committees. And even after that in-house inquiry committee finds the judge guilty of some misconduct, all that they can do is for the Chief Justice to request him to resign. If he doesn't resign, then he can only recommend impeachment. And then it goes through the same process of impeachment. So this is not satisfactory. What needs to be done is to set up an empowered and robust and independent committee of, say, 5 retired judges or 5 retired public people, not members of the sitting judiciary, who can entertain complaints from the public against judges. And if they find some prima facie credibility in those complaints, they can order any investigation or inquiry, thereafter hold a kind of trial of that judge, and if the judge is found guilty, they can recommend his removal, and then thereafter he should be removed or transferred or whatever, without waiting for the matter to go to Parliament, etc. So that's the kind of a judicial complaints commission needs to be set up, which should be independent both of the government and also of the judiciary. That's what we need. It can have public persons, it can have even retired judges, but they should be independent of the sitting judiciary as well as of the government.
How does one move towards formation of this kind of a commission? Do we need a law?
By a parliamentary enactment. We need a law for that, and therefore Parliament needs to enact a law for that. They once brought in some judicial accountability bill, but that bill was defective for various reasons, and that's why it was abandoned. They need a better version of that bill for the system to be reformed.
There's a theory that the huge pendency of cases is a reason behind the corruption in judiciary. How far do you think this is correct?
Well, there is only a very indirect connection between pendency and corruption. You see, when there is a lot of pendency, the whole system becomes dysfunctional. And in a dysfunctional system, the possibility of other kinds of corruption also increases. But there is no direct connection between the two. Unfortunately, corruption is happening primarily because of lack of accountability, lack of any robust system of accountability of the higher judiciary. And also because, it has become, as I said, it's a kind of infectious disease that is spreading through the judiciary. Because if one judge becomes corrupt, then he kind of encourages other judges also to do the same, because they make themselves believe that they are taking money for doing the right thing, for giving the right judgment. So it infects other members of the judiciary also. And this is a growing problem. As I said, it's a virus which is infecting the judiciary. More and more members, and perhaps the percentage of the members of the judiciary who have been infected by this virus is also increasing. It's a very serious problem.
In recent years, there has been a growing perception that the judiciary has not been working in a truly independent manner, and the executive is, sort of wielding control on the judiciary. And we saw a press conference which was addressed by Supreme Court judges in 2018. Since then, have any measures been taken by the judiciary to dispel this notion?
Well, yes, unfortunately, the most serious problem that has occurred recently is the collapse of the independence of the judiciary. And this has happened for various reasons. One of them is the problem of post-retirement jobs being given to judges by the government, or appointed to commissions, tribunals, commissions of inquiry and so on after retirement. Sometimes they are made governors or members of the Raj Sabha, etc. This definitely compromises the independence of the judges if they know that their post-retirement jobs are dependent upon wishes of the government. Then there is a problem which we saw during the emergency also, that if there is a very strong and almost fascist government, then a lot of judges who are otherwise decent and upright, etc., if they are not very strong and robust, they also succumb out of fear. Then there is appointments. You see, in recent years, this government has adopted a very studied policy of not allowing the appointment of inconvenient and independent judges. What they have done is, the law says that the senior judges of the Supreme Court who form the collegium, they send the recommendation. Government has the power to return the recommendations if they find that the recommendations are not appropriate or whatever, with reasons. Thereafter, if the collegium reiterates the same recommendations, then they have to make those appointments. What we are finding is that this government firstly sits upon the recommendations of inconvenient and independent judges, who they perceive will be independent, and they just don't move. They neither send it back nor issue the notification for their appointment. Even when they send it back with objections, and even after they are unanimously reiterated, very often the government still doesn't appoint them, with the result that it's become very difficult in this present state of affairs for even the collegium to get independent judges appointed to the judiciary. Occasionally they do get appointed once in a while, but that is at the cost of the government then enters into a compromise with the Chief Justice. They should take firm action against the government by saying that you are committing contempt of court. Our judgment is very clear. Within 2 months, you have to respond to our recommendations. If you don't respond, it will either be deemed to be an approval, in which case we can proceed to assume that they have been appointed, etc., or we will issue contempt against the law minister or against whoever is stalling it. But they have been afraid to do that.
So delay by the government in approving the names recommended by the collegium is a matter which was taken up on the judicial side. But do you feel that the court did not go the entire length and deal with the matter?
Yes, the court was still kind of pussyfooting around that issue by just kind of egging the government on, all right, we have sent these recommendations, you take action on them. But they were not taking a firm stand that, look, this is enough. You've been sitting on them for years altogether. We will now proceed with contempt. This is what they ought to do.
Coming back to the issue of judicial impropriety or corruption, in the wake of the Justice Varma matter, the Supreme Court judges in a full court meeting decided that they will disclose their assets, make their assets public. So how do you look at this decision?
That's a very positive and welcome step. That was decided early on in 1997 itself. Unfortunately, over the years it got thrown into the waste paper basket and they just stopped disclosing their assets. I am happy that the present Chief Justice has again said that, but those asset disclosures need to be in the public domain.
It's voluntary.
Yeah, it's not just enough to disclose them to the Chief Justice. They have to be put in the public domain so that the people can see.
And there was also a media report which said only 97 out of 770 High Court judges have publicly declared their assets.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate. Actually, all High Court and Supreme Court judges should publicly disclose their assets.
Besides the issue of corruption in judiciary, there's also the question of judicial impropriety. And recently we had the issue of Justice Shekhar Kumar Yadav and the allegedly communal statements that he had made. And you wrote a letter to the Chief Justice of India seeking an in-house inquiry into his conduct. So, are you satisfied with whatever action has been taken with regard to Justice Yadav?
No, that is not satisfactory. They should have proceeded with an in-house inquiry. They asked him for some explanation. He just stuck to his guns, apparently, from the news reports. And thereafter, they found his explanation not correct, but thereafter they have not done anything further about it. So they should proceed further, appoint an in-house inquiry and whatever, recommend his removal, transfer or whatever they find after that.
It all boils down ultimately to appointment of judges and the method that is being adopted to choose judges. Right now, in the wake of the Justice Varma episode, there is a renewed talk about the NJAC, which was passed by Parliament and which was, junked by the Supreme Court of India in 2014. So, how do you look at this renewed talk about the NJAC?
Yeah. So, firstly, the problem of corruption is not directly related to the problem of appointments. Problem of corruption is largely related to the lack of proper accountability in the system. Appointments could be by anybody. If there is no accountability, there will be corruption. Secondly, corruption is not going to decrease just because government has a greater say in the appointments. That will only reduce the independence of the judiciary, which is already under great strain. Already the independence of the judiciary is in a crisis. If you also have more government interference in appointments officially, that will further erode the independence of the judiciary. In fact, that was the ground on which the NJAC Act was struck down by a constitutional bench of the Supreme Court. They said government should have virtually no role in the selection of judges. If you have law minister and some jurists in which the Prime Minister also has a say in appointment of those jurists, And if the secretariat is with the law ministry, that gives the government a lot of scope to interfere with the appointment of judges. And that will erode the independence. So therefore, bringing back the Judicial Appointment Commission is not going to solve the problem of corruption. It will just increase the problem of lack of independence.
But there are questions also being raised about the functioning of the collegium, that it's a non-transparent system, and the very idea of judges, appointing judges, has been seen as, problematic. So how do we, kind of find a middle path between and something like NJAC and the collegium system?
Yeah, so it's true that the system of appointment by the collegium is also has many problems. One of them is lack of transparency. Another is lack of any laid out system. What is the criteria on the basis of which judges will be selected? How would that criteria be applied? Secondly, there is a lot of nepotism because of lack of transparency and lack of system. So we find that judges who are in the collegium, not all, but often, judges in the collegium seek to appoint either their own relatives or their own friends or people whom they know very well, etc. And there is no serious attempt to select the best among all the available people. So that is why, and one of the reasons for this is that sitting judges, if they select judges, see, every year about 100 judges of the High Courts and the Supreme Court have to be selected. If 100 judges have to be selected, roughly 1,000 judges, 1,000 people's records would have to be examined to select 100 best out of them. That requires a lot of time. If you have 5 senior sitting judges of the Supreme Court, they are already very busy with their judicial work. They do not have the time to devote to selecting 100 judges every year out of 1,000 shortlisted people. So that is why we have always been of the view that we need a full-time Judicial Appointments Commission. And this Judicial Appointments Commission should be completely independent of the government. Can have retired judges, etc., but it needs to be a full-time body, but completely independent of the government. So that's what we need to do, a 5-member or 7-member Judicial Appointments Commission, not ex officio, shouldn't have the law minister or sitting judges, should have some retired judges, retired public people, etc., but selected in a manner so that they are independent of the government at least. They should be doing the selection after laying down a selection criteria and with some transparency also. At least the shortlisted candidates should be made public so that the people can, the criteria should be made public so that the people can give suggestions or point out that this person is not appropriate or this person is more appropriate, etc., etc. Of course, ultimate decision will be of the selection committee, but they should be able to take all that into consideration.
Justice Khanna has started this process of interviewing all the candidates, the judges whose names are being recommended for appointment to the higher judiciary. So how do you look at that move?
No, interviews are all right, but more than interviews, see, their record has to be seen properly. So you first lay down the criteria. If you ask a retired Chief Justice, okay, what were you looking when you were making appointments? They will mostly say, looking at competence and integrity. The question is, are these the only 2 relevant qualities? What about judicial temperament? What about an understanding of the socio-economic situation of the country? Are these not relevant considerations for appointment of judges? So therefore, you first lay down a criteria. Thereafter, you lay down a method of how you will judge people on this criteria. Thereafter, you make a short list and put it out in the public domain. You get comments from the people or the lawyers, etc., who may know something about it. So thereafter, you should be making the selection. You can interview them also if you want to. But interview should not be the main criteria for selecting these judges.
To wrap up the interview, I would like to ask you about what do you think could be the tangible outcomes of, the Justice Varma episode, or maybe also the case of Justice Shekhar Kumar Yadav. What are the tangible outcomes of these instances for us? How can we take them forward with regard to judicial accountability and
So I hope that
propriety?
it will lead to a Judicial Accountability Commission and a law to bring about a Judicial Accountability Commission, which will have a more robust system of investigating complaints against judges and taking action against them. I hope that in future also there will be greater transparency in dealing with such cases, that this will not be a one-off case.
Okay, thank you so much, sir, for talking to Frontline.
Thank you.